So you're a control freak?
I exercise control in all things.
It must be really boring.
Hello and welcome to episode 53 of Popcorn and Prosecco, a show that's all about talking about movies. I'm Perri Nemiroff, and here are my co-hosts, Kristy Puchko and Angie.
Hey everybody.
Hi.
Alright, so this week we are going to talk a little bit about the movie What We Do in the Shadows, and then we're going to hit our big review for the week, which is 50 Shades of Grey, and we're going to wrap up with a new version of our Caption Contest, which I guess we can't really call it Caption Contest, but you'll see what we mean when we get to it. But let's start with What We Do in the Shadows. Angie, it's all yours.
All right. So this is a New Zealand vampire comedy, and here's the plot summary. Viago, Deacon, and Vladislav are vampires who are finding that modern life has them struggling with the mundane, like paying rent, keeping up with the chore wheel, trying to get into nightclubs, and overcoming flatmate conflicts. It's by, how do you pronounce it? Is it Taika Waititi?
I don't know. I'm quite honestly happy that you picked this because I had no idea how to pronounce his name.
If I were a better podcaster, I would have done my research and checked ahead of time, but it didn't occur to me until right now. Anyway, so it's him and Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords. This is their movie. And basically, I feel like if you like the sense of humor in Flight of the Conchords, you're going to enjoy this movie.
I never got into Flight of the Conchords, though, and I found this really funny. I think I just think the fact that vampires are so mainstream and it's like so part of pop culture right now that anybody can appreciate someone poking fun at them, especially when it's really clever and the characters are actually really engaging like they are here.
That's actually what I liked so much about this is it's a vampire. It works as a vampire movie. It works as a mockumentary because it's all shot as a documentary about these vampire roommates. And it actually works on a level of just being a really smart comedy where I feel like even if you don't really care about vampires, it's funny in that it's... I mean, I described it in my review for Pajiba as if This American Life did a documentary about vampires in New Zealand. Like, it's got this very kind of cheeky sense of humor, but it's not, like, ribald exactly. And I like how there's every kind of vampire, basically, in it, where you've got, like, Nosferatu, and you got the one guy who keeps saying, I'm like Twilight, I'm like Twilight. And it's just kind of everything in between. And it's so funny. I've already watched it twice. And
I'm so sad that I don't have a DVD screener because I could only watch it once. I kind of wanted to request it just for the hell of it, even though I had already seen it.
Because because I watched it twice, there's a lot of stuff I caught the second time that I honestly was laughing through the first time and completely missed. And it's just, sometimes it's just a reaction because it's an ensemble piece, but everybody in it's so good together that, like, the second time I just kept watching the guy who plays Stu, which Stu is a human friend they have. And, like, what I love about this movie is so much about being cool and how, like, vampires are the thing that we think of as the epitome of cool, and none of these guys are exactly cool. Yeah. And then they all think Stu's cool, but Stu is the most white bread guy
Stu
ever.
Doesn't even do anything.
He's our human friend, and he's, like, the most boring, normal human you could possibly imagine, and the vampires just, like, worship him. They, like,
Stu
adore him.
Stu basically doesn't even do a single thing in this movie, but just the fact that he's there all the time will make you laugh nonstop. Like, he doesn't even do anything. They just cut to him, and all of a sudden, I watched it with Matt and Eric, and all of a sudden the three of us just, like, cracking up.
Yeah, because it's like they're all freaking out and losing their mind and yelling about the afterlife and stuff, and then they cut to Stu, and there's, like, one thing where Stu is just holding a plate, and I was like, is he doing their dishes? Like, I just couldn't stop giggling. It's just so... It's so smart, and it so kind of feels like the real world, but, like, not in that over-the-top way.
It's a vampire hangout movie, which is why I was actually telling Kristy earlier that the movie that this kind of reminds me of is Only Lovers Left Alive, actually, which is another movie that's just about vampires hanging out. But it's kind of like if you expect that life as a vampire is gonna be like Only Lovers Left Alive, you're like, yeah, I'll be on dead.
That'll be like
so
the next found footage trend.
It'll actually be like, it'll actually be like What We Do in the Shadows.
I guess you could count this as a found footage movie. Well, sort of.
Well, it's a mockumentary.
Yeah, it's much more mockumentary.
People don't really use the term found footage properly, but I'm not going to get into that right now.
No, that's true. But I really thought this was a smart movie, and I thought the guys who wrote it both worked on Flight of the Conchords. Like, Jermaine was the star of that show with Brett Clement, but Brett Mackenzie. Thank you. But you know, this is such a good teaming. It's really smartly done. It's very funny. And, I mean, if you look at the trailers for it, they're just walls of people calling it hilarious, because it is. There's really no reason I can think of that you shouldn't go see this movie.
I agree. I was very sad when it was over, and I think that they should turn it into a TV show.
Oh my god, I would love that.
How brilliant would that be?
Watch that.
I would love to
absolutely.
spend like just a half an hour or an hour like every Sunday night, just kind of like I'm gonna check in with my vampire friends. What are
It'd
they
be
up
spaced
to?
with vampires. I would
Oh,
absolutely
completely.
watch that.
That's a great comparison. But we should move on. In some, I think we are all like, yes, watch
Go
this
see
one.
what we do in the shadows.
Yeah, this is like a really awkward transition. So yeah, go see what we do in the shadows,
Now
and now we're
about
going to
some
talk
other
about 50
roommates.
Shades of Grey. I feel like there's no appropriate transition.
No, I have a
like,
transition.
with any movie.
Wait,
I
Angie's
have
got
a
it.
What is it?
One of the things I loved about What We Do in the Shadows is what great chemistry the cast has. Speaking
Okay.
of chemistry,
Oh, you guys. All right, so here's the official synopsis for 50 Shades of Grey, according to IMDb. Literature student Anastasia Steele's life changes forever when she meets handsome yet tormented billionaire Christian Grey. That's a bad description of this movie. You
how
probably
is that
know
a bad description?
because it doesn't really get into what the movie is about and why it's so controversial and why people are freaking out about
So
it.
what do
It's
you
the
want it to
se-
say?
it's
This
the
is about a college student meeting a billionaire who decides to bind her up and have sex with her?
There you go,
Okay.
right there. You sold the movie. Now everybody knows what it is.
But
But-
Everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, you don't need to. I would agree with you if it was a movie that we're like, what is this about? But like at this point, we probably didn't even need to read that. Literally,
See,
like.
but the funny thing is, my big issue with this movie is that is the thing that's drawing people in and getting everybody to talk about it. The sex stuff is what I found to be the most boring parts of this movie. Every time the two of them were just talking, and I was kind of, like, in relation to the sex stuff, I did like tracking their relationship and how she reacted to these insane things that he was requesting of her, and not necessarily in the Red Room of Pain, but like just sitting at the table. Like one of the
He's
best
very
scenes in the
demanding
movie
outside of the Red Room.
was the contract scene. I liked seeing her play
That's by
that.
far the sexiest scene, and nobody's even like remotely naked in that scene. I loved it.
That's true. I thought she was fantastic, and I liked this movie a lot more than I thought I would. I would probably watch it again, to be honest.
I think we all agreed that we went in there expecting a shit show, frankly, because for various reasons, including that it's very public knowledge that the cast does not like each other, and that E.L. James, the author, is fighting relentlessly with Sam Taylor Johnson, who directed the movie. And, you know, it just sounded like everything about this. And also the whole thing of they were trying to take this book that has very explicit sex and make it an R-rated movie that would be commercially successful, which is hard to do. And, the movie turned out better than I expected. I, for one, thought that Anastasia has a lot more agency than I had heard she had in the books. So I thought it was just going to be this girl who's like, I'm a virgin and I don't know about things. And he was going to be like, let me do stuff
Well,
to you.
the problem with it in the book is that E.L. James just doesn't know how to write a character like that. I feel like that was always there in the character in the book, but she has a habit of repeating the same phrases over and over in the book, and it makes the character feel dumb. And that's not what was there. There was more meat to the character, but it's just you kind of perceive her the wrong way because of that, I think.
I feel like we should point out that both Angie and I attempted to read this book. Angie is still trying to read the book. I gave up ages ago because I just couldn't deal with James's prose.
I get it, but like I just found it like a really swift, easy read, and I ended up having the same problem with the book that I did with this movie, is that I know it's all about the sex, and that's what makes it cool and a standout, but I found that shit to be the most boring part, because, okay, in the movie, is it a spoiler? Or, she's a fucking virgin, whatever. Alright, okay, so she's a virgin, she has sex with him for the first time, and it's just like, holy shit, big moment, great, good for her. But then, the next time they do it, it's like, alright, well, like, you kind of, like, did it again. There's no, like, even
it doesn't feel like much of a build. I get
it. It doesn't build much, and they do the same thing with the playroom. They bring her into the playroom once, and they do all that crazy shit, and you're like, oh my god, look at all this crazy stuff that happens. And then she's like, wants to go back in, and the second time it's just like, yeah, like you know.
I want to talk about the sex in the movie, because one of the things about the book, one of the reasons it got so much attention is everyone's like, oh my god, it's so kinky. And, like, you know, the actors and, like, the filmmakers kept talking about, like, oh, my God, yeah, it's so wild and sexy. Yeah, and then I went in, and it turns out that his, like, you know, his, like, very singular tastes or whatever was the quote from the trailer, are that he likes, like, light bondage and some spanking. Honestly, like, it's barely worse than anything that we've seen on, like, any other movie sex scene. You see more transgressive sex on a regular episode of Girls, and
or
you
Broad
see more...
City. Like, Broad City
Yeah,
just
and you
tackled
see more...
pegging. And, like,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
you
50
see-
Shades is like, ooh, she gets tickled with a peacock feather and spanked a bit. Like,
I know, and, like, even, like, the nudity, like, I mean, like she's naked, but you see more nudity on like the average episode of like
she
Game of
is
Thrones.
naked quite a lot. Like
She's
that
naked a
actually
lot.
took me out of the movie a little bit because I couldn't stop thinking about how this poor girl had to be on set naked for hours and hours with all those people just staring at her.
I was more surprised by how we don't see much of him.
I know.
Like, we see his ass twice, and we see, like, I don't know how else to put this, the base of his dick.
He's shirtless for no reason a lot of the time, but that's about it.
But,
like,
but that's not even my issue. It's not so much that we didn't see a lot of him. It's that the camera doesn't look at him the way I expected it to, because this is a movie about female desire, and we got lots of shots of her reacting to things, which I actually thought was great, because I feel like female arousal is something cinema doesn't tend to deal very well with or very much with. It's usually from the male gaze and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't feel like we have female gaze so much because we're looking at Grey, but I didn't often feel we were like reveling in Grey. Like, we talked a couple of weeks ago about The Boy Next Door, and there are shots in The Boy Next Door where you are full on leering at that boy next door, which is female gaze. It's like looking at his muscles and being like, like, they don't really do that with Grey, which I was surprised by.
Well, I get what you're saying, and I do wish there was a little more of that, but I'm almost happy that we focused more on her because she carried this whole movie.
Yeah,
her
I'm with
performance here
Perri.
is kind of incredible. I hope that people take note of that and don't just get swept up in the craze, and she actually gets more quality roles because of this.
she's
because
actually
that's
funny.
the reason this works so well. She's
funny.
hilarious.
Yeah,
she's
and like
hilarious
in a
and
real
she's
way,
deep.
where I wasn't laughing at her. She's successfully pulling off funny moments. I felt for her character, though I never got why she likes Christian. I get that he's rich and powerful. I get
He's
that.
a very badly written character. I feel like she's like a better written character. I feel like Dakota Johnson honestly was such perfect casting because you need her to be the every girl, but you need her to be believably like beautiful and desirable enough and like attractive enough that, you know, the story makes sense. And
She
I felt like she
straddled
walked
that
line
line really well.
perfectly. Yeah, she felt like someone that you could be like friends with, that you would like see in a coffee shop, but she also felt like, you know,
it
glamorous
wasn't
and
like
beautiful and
a
sexy.
she's all that thing where they just like put
Exactly.
glasses on her and be
I
like,
was so
she's
glad they
the
didn't put
ugly
glasses
one.
on her. I was like, okay, thank you, movie, for not making it like,
Yeah.
now we take off glasses and she's super smoking.
She also just gives you a lot of access to the character. It's like the whole
very,
situation
like,
isn't
open.
laughable because you could see the wheels in her head turning and you could see that she's so conflicted and like you feel for her because if that didn't happen, this whole thing would be one big freaking joke. Like someone handing over a contract like that, it's tough to take that seriously.
I agree,
Exactly.
but
and she handles it a lot more interestingly than I expected her to. Like, from what I had heard about the book, and like I said, I couldn't get through it, I thought it was very much just going to be him dominating everything she said, but she really poked back at a lot of the times. And like the contract scene that we talked about where they actually are negotiating, I thought she really stood her ground and she said, this is what I'm okay with, this is what I'm not okay with. And she really set the terms, and I thought that was exciting and interesting.
Yeah.
And then she also made fun of him at points where she was like, really?
They get his transition down much better than they do in the book. Like, in the book, you don't really see that. Like, he does say, like, you're changing me, or something like that, maybe, like, once or twice. But here, you actually see it happening, and you feel it, and that's what gives the movie meaning.
I was going to say, the issue I had with him as a person was not the BDSM stuff, but that I found him to be really manipulative, where she says she wants a relationship, and he's like, I don't do that. I just basically have fuck puppets that I keep in my room. And she was like, well, you know, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, I want to date you. And so he will say something she doesn't like, and when she responds in a way he doesn't like, he's like, okay, well, maybe I'll take you to a movie. Okay, well, maybe, you know, you're the only girl that I actually sleep with as opposed to just have sex with. And I felt like it was really manipulative, and that bugged me a lot about him. So I couldn't get on board with
in a
him.
completely opposite manner. I saw that all as, like, her getting through to him and him wanting to do the right thing for her.
There are things about him that are manipulative, but I don't know if it felt wholly manipulative to me, because it also felt like he sincerely just is surprised that he feels romantically about her. But maybe we should get into spoilers, because there's one aspect of Christian that I really want to talk about that's kind of a spoiler.
Okay, so
Are we ready?
Spoilers? Let's do it.
Okay, so Christian is just a badly written character in general, but one thing that I really didn't like about this movie is the way it treats BDSM as like a pathology, as if it's something messed up, when the movie at the same time really just revels in it. So Christian is this guy who, like, he only likes BDSM sex. He only likes being the dominant. And that's fine, like, you know, if that's what he likes. But the thing I hated was that the movie treats it like, oh, but it's because his life is horrible. It's because he was like abused as a small child and like raped as a teenager, and it's because like his life is all
and raped
fucked up
repeatedly and like
yeah,
chronically.
it was really obnoxious to me that this movie is like, oh, isn't it hot how dominant he is? Yeah, it's because he was raped as a child. And you're just like, I don't know. I felt like that really just is a disservice to normal people who like it. There's a lot of emphasis in this movie on like, oh, is this what normal people do? Is this what normal people don't do? And I just thought it was weird because it's like, it wants to normalize S&M sex a little, but like not really. It was a very like strange.
The movie is shot in a very sex-positive way, where they make sure to emphasize the consent Anastasia expresses. They make sure that we focus on that she is enjoying herself, and it isn't all about like Christian wants to do this, and so he's doing this, and he doesn't care about her. Like, it's very sex-positive in those ways. But a major plot point, which I'm going to assume was just a no deal breaker for various reasons, is that he is into BDSM because he was abused, and so he gets her into it. And I agree. I feel like that's not fair to demonize BDSM in that way, and also to act like quote unquote normal people don't enjoy kinky sex. Like, I felt like that's a weird statement for this book to make, especially in retrospect, where it's what turned a lot of quote unquote normal people onto BDSM.
I guess I didn't really take it as them sending that message in a purposeful manner, but I mean, obviously, the second you put a backstory like that in a movie, inadvertently, it may send the message. I don't think it ever fights for saying it's right or wrong one way or the other, though.
I also just wish that when she did her Google search, which I also thought was weird, he had to coach her through what to Google search. I thought, like, type it, like, how hard is it to research sex stuff on the internet? Come on. But like,
she has a 4.0 GPA in college, and like she doesn't know like basic.
Hey, she was graduating college and was going for quite a while with a broken computer. That girl's got internet issues.
Yeah, that is a fair and valid point. But like the photos they show are very aggressive photos of BDSM, which I was like, of course that's intimidating. But like, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I was interested in. Despite all the stuff that we talked about, despite the fact that the chemistry is weird, and like, I feel like we should talk a little bit about Jamie Dornan, because I know we all had issues with him in this movie. He's just so flat.
I don't know. That was exactly what I pictured while reading the book. I mean, for some reason, maybe I did picture a flat character, but when I pictured Christian Grey and how he behaved and how he carried himself, that right there is it. Although, it's like what you were saying with the female gaze earlier. Perhaps the director had an issue with his performance, and maybe they cut around some of that a little bit. I was just thinking maybe that was why we were focusing on her to such an extreme compared to him.
Jamie Dornan has said to the press that he like would not let certain parts of his body be shown, would not be shot in certain ways. He was very specific about it, which it's funny because it makes him come off as really uptight. So, I mean, I went into the movie with that in my head. And, I mean, maybe that colored the treatment, in which case Jamie did the movie a disservice. And also, it was kind of uptight for him to feel like that when he's an underwear model. Like, he's done that. So, like,
Jamie Dornan has been, like, really weirdly squeamish about the sex stuff throughout the press tour. And I don't know about what it says about his attitudes towards sex personally, but I think that maybe, like, in a professional sense, he feels weird about being linked so strongly with this movie that
being the poster boy for BDSM.
Yeah, I feel like maybe he feels weird about that, which is understandable. He's not doing a great job selling it. But I don't know. I just felt like the movie would have been stronger if, number one, Christian Grey was a better character, someone we actually liked a little bit more, someone we understood a little bit better. Number two, Jamie Dornan was a better actor, and number three, if they had better chemistry, because the whole movie is built around like there's this just irresistible connection between these two people, and like they can't stay away from each other. You have to really buy into that to really buy into the movie. The chemistry isn't as bad as I had feared based on like their press tour stuff, where they seem like they can't stand each other, but I don't know, there wasn't like that much.
Have you watched some interviews of them solo? They do a much better job selling the movie when the two of them are on their own.
I feel like they don't like each other.
Now here's my question to you guys. My question is that we know that they're already going to do the sequels because this movie, before it's open, has already sold so many tickets. Do you think, one, that they should recast Jamie Dornan, and two, that they will?
Yes, and I don't think I think they probably should, but I don't think they really can at this point. It's like weird to recast.
I don't think they should from a viewer's perspective. I didn't have any really. Obviously I had problems with this performance, but I thought it was fine. Like, it was definitely nowhere near enough wrong with it to pull him out of the movie, but if it's something that's going, like, for all we know, maybe they went into it being fine with each other and some sort of animosity grew throughout the shoot. If they go into it, like, full force hating each other, that could just ruin the movies, too. Maybe they should recast it for that reason.
There have been movies that have been about people that fucking hated each other falling in love. I mean, and I don't mean the characters. I mean, like Sabrina and stuff like that. There's a lot of movies where the actors hated each other, but on screen, magic.
Well, that will be the director's call if she even continues on with the franchise.
Yeah, I doubt she'll come back.
Yeah, she sounded like she had a tough time with E.L. James.
I hope Sam Taylor Johnson gets to go on to do much better things, because I feel like she took a really tricky property and did something interesting with it, and that's hard to do. And, you know, we're hearing more and more about what a pain E.L. James was to work with on set, and so I feel like producers are going to hear that and be like, and she dealt with all that, and I think people are going to want to work with her, and I think they should.
Well,
I mean, it was a good enough
glad
movie
to hear that they're making more. I haven't read the books yet, so I don't know how much potential the material has, but this movie really surprised me. I enjoyed it. I laughed. I was engaged in their relationship and how it grew throughout the movie. And I don't know if I'm a big fan of the abrupt ending like that, but it certainly left me wanting to know more. And I almost do appreciate how unconventional it was, because even though I read the book, it, like, hit me, like, out of nowhere. I don't know why I was not prepared for that, but I wasn't, and it definitely left me looking forward to 2 more.
I remember you being like, that's it? And I was like, you read the book.
I know. And, you know, I came home after. I was, like, in shock. I'm like, was it really in the book? And, like, yeah, it's in the book. I don't know what I was expecting.
So, yay or nay, are we recommending people see this?
Definitely yay.
Yeah, I say if you like the book, you'll be happy. And if you didn't like the book, I still think it's good for a girls' night.
I feel like once you remove it from the context of, like, all this, like, argument and hype and whatnot, like, it's a pretty decent romantic drama. It's not, like, amazing, but if you're into that kind of thing, you'll probably enjoy it. She makes the movie. I think it's Sam Taylor Johnson and Dakota Johnson deserve so much credit for making it work.
All right, on to our last section. Kristy, you have our Caption Contest / new contest.
Yeah, it's games time, guys. So last week we were celebrating our 1-year anniversary, and so we posted a picture from our Winter's Tale set visit. Here it is. And our winner is at Devindra, which is our friend Devindra Hardwar, who was on the show recently. His caption is, "Ew, who let Jeff Wells in here?" And if you don't know who Jeff Wells is, the super short version of that is that he is a entertainment journalist who...
Oh.
Yeah, he's a professional troll. He only comes up because he said something super offensive, typically about a woman or a person of color or whatever. His latest thing is that he said lots of shitty things about Amy Schumer's new trailer that had nothing to do with the trailer, all about Amy Schumer's body and whether or not he thinks she's fuckable. If you want to read more about that, I wrote about it for Pajiba, and we'll put the links in the doobly-doo. I just totally stole that from my Idea channel. You should also watch Idea channel, sorry. Moving on to the second part, which is our contest for this week. 50 Shades. People have seen the images. People have seen the thing. We've decided instead we're going to ask you guys a question. So please respond to this 50 Shades inspired question. What has less sexual chemistry than Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson? So answer that question. If we tweet at us at Popcorn Prosecco, if we like what you had to say, you'll be on next week's show.
All right, and that is a wrap on this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. You know that you can catch us all over the place on YouTube. You can go on iTunes where you can rate us, like us, comment, all of that. Like us on Facebook. Then you can also follow us on Twitter where you can participate in our contest at Popcorn Prosecco. And then all 3 of us are all over the web as well. Kristy, you want to take it first?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kristy Puchko. And you can find my career highlights at decadentcriminals.com.
Angie?
Find me on Twitter at AJHAN, and I write for slashfilm.com.
And you can catch me on collider.com and on Twitter at Nemiroff. So, that's a wrap on this episode, and we'll see you next week.
I go for a look which I call dead but delicious.
I always have to catch myself from writing Dakota Fanning instead of Dakota Johnson.
Yeah, I've done that about 15 times. Oh, I also wrote Kingsman Secret Cervix. I spelled cervix wrong, but then that made me laugh really hard, and I got, like, completely derailed. Thinking of other vagina movies. It was like, this
That's like a fun Twitter game. I love it.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, it's been a weird...
That's the porn parody. Kingsman the Secret Cervix.
I would watch that movie.